Morning.
Hello.
Really good.
There she is.
Yes, had a little difficulty getting in. I'm
Coming.
there.
Yes.
Oh, hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for being so patient. I'm so sorry. I've got this project going in the city, and when I get phone calls, I kind of got to take them. So that's where I was. So
Okay. And Mark is back. Hi, Mark.
yes.
Morning. Whereabouts are you, Anne?
What?
Which part of the country are you in?
Oh, Santa Barbara, California.
Okay. It is morning still. Am I the only one on the Eastern time zone?
No,
No.
I'm in Atlanta.
Well,
Okay,
that's right.
great.
That's right.
Where are you, Mark?
Normally I'm in Rhode Island, or lately I've been in Rhode Island, but today I'm in Detroit.
Oh, Detroit. That's where I was born.
Oh. Yeah, I went to grad school in Michigan and lived here for a year after grad school.
Oh, I spent about 20 years there.
Cool. Yeah, it's a great city.
Well, it's getting better, that's for sure. It was not so great when I was there.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that was 50 years ago. So yes. No, 60 years ago.
So I've just kind of a check-in. I've spent the morning like reviewing my life.
Whoa.
Reviewing where I lived, you know, and where I am now and where I want to be. And I want to go back to where I lived before at Friendship Manor here in Santa Barbara. So we'll just see if that happens or not. But I loved it there, and hope to be there again. But it's interesting. I had to get out 3 passports to figure out where I'd been. So it's been fun to recall and touch into those places and times and ages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did a little bit of that also, actually. And it occurred to me when I thought back that I didn't really start to live, to do things that I wanted to do until after my liver cancer.
Oh, really?
That kind of really opened up that space. Not that I didn't do things before, I did. And a couple of things I'm really proud of, but it wasn't so much an expression of who I was as it has been since then. That really was a release of some sort. It wasn't a conscious plan, but that's what happened. So it was just interesting to see that,
Yeah.
It was interesting to see that.
Awakened.
I've had fun since then in the things I've done.
That certainly resonates with me, Kathryn. I had to go to Knoxville to be treated for cancer because they were one of the few in the country that had a proton beam, clinic. And so I just declared to my wife, I'm going on sabbatical. And I did nothing but walk in the wilderness. They have wilderness parks in Knoxville. It's not really wilderness, but they call it wilderness parks, but heavily forested.
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful place to walk. And I painted and I wrote extensively. Oh, and I took my treatments too. But it helped me keep my mind off the treatments. But the other part, it just changed my life completely.
Yeah.
It's like, when I'm doing a design project, I'm an architect, Mark. At the beginning, I'm just sort of pulling in all directions, but You know,
Yeah.
after a while, there's that charrette period, and then suddenly, boom, comes into focus. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And that was 7 years ago. So I'm sort of well into it at this point.
Yeah,
But
mine
it
was
truly makes a difference.
yeah, yeah. Mine was 2005 and 6 was my cancer journey. Yeah.
I acknowledge my being blessed in a special way. That was a turning point, like the two of you have mentioned, but mine was in the forest, alone in the forest for 3.5 months. That was a catalyst in my life.
Yeah.
That still, you know, is doing its thing.
Yeah, well, I have this feeling that for myself, it's like all the things I've learned in my life, you know, have all the things I've been taught kind of have created a persona, and that persona is not who I am. I mean, it's an what's the word? Agglomeration? No, I can't remember the word. An agglomeration of all these things that people have thought I should be, trying to act like them. I thought I should be, and you know, it's a very specific process of stopping for a period of time and just saying, okay, let's see what really proves out and what doesn't. And frankly, a lot of things didn't change all that much, but the way I looked at them certainly did, because then I'd made my own decision. So it's a real process. It's not just sort of a boing, suddenly I'm different.
So Mark, thoughts? I don't want to leave you out of this.
I mean,
Yeah,
on
we
this
just like to
thread,
get going.
I like if this sort of sense of sort of coming into peace with oneself and feeling like the path is clearer than it might have been previously. I would say that getting close to that point. I've probably been on a journey for about 15 years of finding that clarity,
Yeah.
and being able to consistently be doing things that like I feel aligned with it. So I'm probably still a little bit behind you all, but yeah, what each of you have said resonates for sure.
Can I ask, probe a bit?
You can.
In you're saying you feel a little behind us a bit. And I get the feeling of that and understanding and totally accept that, but I would love for you to unpack that a little bit.
Well, I guess just hearing each of you say that, especially I think Kathryn kind of said this quite clearly, like, again, paraphrasing, not using the same words, but like, it felt like, yeah, there was this clarifying moment that kind of enabled her to, to be more joyful more often in her life. And I feel like I've been in that transition period from sort of being on one sort of passion pathway for sort of my first career, which was very different in the sailboat industry, racing and designing components of sailboats, to doing work that sort of matters to the bigger than self arena. And because of where I was and how much growth and development I had to go through to get there, there's just so much internal reorientation that it wasn't always fun, and maybe isn't always fun. But when I feel like that gets significantly far along on that that part of the journey, that it gets to it moves through a phase, and sort of the door opens and the floodgates open, so to speak. So yeah, like behind isn't the right framing, because there's necessarily no destination specifically, but I think what I've said, that's my first answer, at least.
Thanks. I love your statement, and I wrote it down, and it's like I want to contemplate it. When you said about the matters in the bigger than self arena, I love that statement. Matters in the bigger than self arena. I can feel that's such a good assignment of, I don't know, meaning or something. I mean, I can relate to that in my own life. The matters in the bigger than myself arena that I've been engaged in, that I've wanted to be engaged in, that I've dove into in my life, like in juvenile probation. Woo! Oh, and family community leadership training institute. Yeah. It's like, whoa, beautiful statement.
Yeah, that's where it's fun, actually.
Yeah.
you have no personal tie or need there. It's just seeing it happen and seeing the impact and freeing stuck stuff and all that kind of stuff. It's just really fun. It gives you a non-attached place to function from, where you can really focus on what's happening. Nice. And you're not concerned about yourself or what you're going to get out of it or any of that kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah, it makes it much more fun. I had that conversation this morning with, I'm trying to work with city departments and to get them to really step into a collaboration amongst themselves and amongst the community. And the conversation I had this morning was, well, we've gotten in trouble before stepping outside of our boundaries, and that's really uncomfortable. And I said, yes, and I really understand that, and I respect that a great deal. I want to protect you, but I need your help in doing that, because I don't know who needs to know before, so that they don't feel pushed out of shape or, surprised, or, you knew before I did, and I'm ahead of the thing, and I want to get out, but I need your help. I don't know who to talk to. So if you can point me in the right direction, I'm perfectly willing to raise the banner. They can't fire me. They can't get mad at me. They can't do anything to me. So I can push, and I have the ear of the mayor. So I can help her help them. If I know who we need to help.
That's hard.
So we'll see where they go with that. I mean, it is a big stretch for them. Which is why I wanted to talk with them more deeply. And they're just afraid to go outside their box, and they feel overwhelmed with what they're doing anyway. So they don't really have time, and nobody's given them permission to have time. So I do understand that context. So we'll see where we go with it, but it is really hard. And it will be really interesting to see. I mean, I don't even know if the mayor is going to say, sure, she could say, gee, it's a nice idea, but I got other things to do. There's no guarantee in any of this. So I don't want people at risk in any way. I really want people to be open to the possibility and supportive of making the possibility possible, but not feel that they're at risk in any real way. So that's the conversation we had. And hopefully she will take it back to the others. She's leaving too, so she's kind of got a little more freedom, but the other two aren't. They're young, they're in their career, they want to be with the city, you know, maybe for their entire life, I don't know. And so you don't want to jeopardize. I don't want to jeopardize, but I need their help to not jeopardize, because I don't know how to do that, but they will know who in the system needs to be talked to. And so that's fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I have confidence in you completely.
Well, it's not me, it's everybody else.
Yeah, but you have a way, a capacity, an approach that is non-threatening, supportive, and has a systems view. And to me, that's unstoppable.
Hope so. Well, it's new ideas to everybody. You know, it's like all these ears are perking up going, oh yeah, we should do this, we should do this. So we'll just see, because yeah, I have no idea what it's going to look like. I'm trying to keep everybody involved. I keep sending the mayor the proposal we've written so far, my ideas mostly, and now I'm starting to get people's input into it, so it's starting to change a little bit, so that she's not surprised. But then the question is, who else needs to know so they're not surprised, because people don't like surprises, especially in politics. It's just not cool. So you have to know who to talk to early enough that they don't have to be on board, they have to be aware, so they feel they have some sense of control early enough, so that they don't get reactive. So and I'm going to need help on the inside to make that happen, because I can't do that.
What do you mean on the inside?
Well, in the city departments, because I've never worked with these departments before, and I know that people who work with the earth really have an understanding of all the things that could happen. But then you got policy and ordinances and all the rules that they also have to fit in. Like single stream recycling is good because people throw things away, bad because they can't really use the stuff they get because it's such a mess. And they don't have the capacity, so they burn almost everything they get because there's just no way to do anything else with it. And so I'm not addressing that, but that will get pushed. I know it will at some point. When you really start to think about that, we're talking about soil, we're not talking about that, but the composting is in the solid waste department. So it's a concern they're going to have, and it's going to come up at some point in time. And that's big, it's expensive, it's all sorts of stuff. Their current supplier and the group companies that they're working with are geared to the old system, where if I can't make money out of it, we don't do it. And so if we don't do it, it gets burned. They haul something like, I don't know, 17 tons of metals out of this burning facility every year, or I think it's even more than that, because people are throwing away wire and just all, zippers, all sorts of stuff that get burned, go to the bottom, and then they have to get the sludge out.
So
I mean, they're doing the best they can in the system they have, but there's so much waste.
what I'm hearing and what you're saying is the capitalism underpinning their approach and their understanding of things.
Well, their capacity, yeah.
And so your job is to bring in a different frame of reference. I don't know how to put it exactly, but
Yeah.
a different value set system.
Yeah. Yeah. My hope is that if they start really pulling forward the care for the earth that resides in these places in the city, but is constricted by all sorts of other policies and bureaucracies and ways of doing things that we've always had, and everything else supports. Yeah, and it's capitalist driven, sure, because money and profit. The city, government systems have no way of making money. The only way they get money is through taxes, as a rule. Now they've gotten sort of entrepreneurial over the last, I don't know, 25, 30 years, and have little businesses that pull in money. So we've got water and we've got waste, and you pay for your buckets, and you have fines if you overuse stuff and all that kind of thing, which is an income stream. But they don't really have a lot of money. They don't have a way of getting money except through that. So they truly are quite constrained. So capitalism works if you've got something that you can turn into that, that gives you an additional income stream. So it's kind of embedded in the system. So, you at this point, you got to work with it. They have to have money. They have to be able to pay for this. So I'm part of this program is bringing in some nonprofits so that we have access to grant money. Although the city does also write grants. So there are some of those avenues potentially possible, so that the city doesn't feel like they have to pay for it all, because marketing, things like that, is not something that a city would really want to spend a lot of money on. They don't advertise themselves. That's not what they do. But the education is so key to this program. If people don't understand the value of what they're doing and don't understand what they're going to get personally out of it, quite apart from anything else, because we're not talking climate change at all, because this is a purple city. And there'll be huge backlashes about, well, we don't have to do that here, we don't have to do that. But we just had fires here. So I can talk about addressing fires. I can talk about addressing floods, which follow fires. I can talk about not getting caught in those things by taking care of your soil now. That's a rational conversation. And it's science driven and all of that. So we can talk that, which is all I'm talking. And if we do these things, we will be much more resilient than we would ever be. But if we don't, we won't.
I'd like to go ahead, Robert.
Well, Kathryn, would you talk a little bit about the administrative, well, that's really the responsibility of government, to be administrative. It's not to make money. Right. And so that's one of the biggest squawks, I guess, from the conservative end of things, is that, okay, then replace all that, all that administrative stuff with contractors. That's what our city's doing.
Yeah.
We have contracted building inspectors, contracted water and, utilities, well, administrators. And so they're people who cycle in and out from our city, which is Brookhaven. It's actually, Mark, it's a composite city. Atlanta is really just a small part, but Brookhaven and Dunwoody and, Sandy Springs, these contracted groupings, these experts, circulate from one city and even to city of Atlanta. They circulate because everybody's using them. Then what happens is, I guess somehow it's making money because it's a for-profit organization, company, that supplies these people. So my question to you is that really administration, or what is it, and how do you deal with it? because we don't have a small town effect here. We have contractors, we have, you know, people who are in it to make it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's been one of the corruptions of government, actually, is this belief that it has to make money, that it shouldn't be supported. And we can see that in a lot of places. The news media is the same way. 100 years ago, the newspapers were actually supported by the government. They actually got money from the government to print. So they were free to print whatever they wanted to. There was no pressure on them one way or the other.
I didn't know that.
And then it shifted. And so when they lost that income, they had to go to advertising. Another model would be supported by nonprofits, that there are nonprofits that are designed to support media, which again would free the media to be able to do what the media should do without fear. But we're not there yet. So we have this Puritan belief that everything has to pay for itself in some sort of way. You know, people are only valuable if they work, and produce is part of that. And it's one of the things that fascism has grabbed onto, that you're not valuable as a human being unless you're able to produce in some kind of way. And we kind of all are tired with that because we feel uncomfortable when we can't produce in some sort of way. We've lost the joy of living piece that just says existence is great and that we can really help each other do that. You know, we're here to do something, but it has to be productive in some kind of way. It has to have value. And at the same time, which is just interesting, money has been produced by lack of value. They've been very creative with the money system to design it to reproduce itself without giving back anything to the system at all. Interest and all those kinds of things have absolutely nothing to do with the system. They're just ways of making money. And people get really good at that.
Well, what about some of the highest producers of income? I guess they are producing a product. I'm thinking of sports and I'm thinking of entertainment. It produces billions upon hundreds of billions of dollars worth of value that shows up in our gross national product, but doesn't actually contribute, you know, to the living of people. I guess it,
right. Yeah.
I guess it does contribute to, you know, happiness. You know,
the illusion
of happiness.
They're diversions from real happiness.
So when people project themselves into those situations,
we feel good.
But they're not doing anything themselves. So in a sense, that is also separated from real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we
as much as finance? Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, aren't we really talking about the money, the profit-based economic system that we have, where you put in one and take out two, which doesn't really serve? So isn't what you're really talking about is that in the profit motive that put its tentacles into all of the thoughts that we have about how to do life, how to make a system, you know, it's time for the shift. It is the time for us to mentally shift our values from profit-based to, I mean, you mentioned the Puritan belief that everybody's got to be productive. I believe that because we need to. I need to. So So it's not about that. It's about the profit motive that takes everything down.
How you understand value. Yes.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
you understand value.
Yeah. That's really, and
More about that.
we've shifted value. The only way we recognize value is monetary.
Right. Right.
So, you know, when you look at economics and GDP and all those things, you know, it was women who looked at that and said, well, what about all the people who take care of others? They're not part of this economy. We don't give them any value. And not only that, don't we give them value, we take away value, take away their capacity to even add value through these other processes that we've set up because we can measure those. So, I mean, the very thought that if you have a tornado comes through your town and destroys everything, and you have to rebuild it, and that increases GDP is crazy. It's crazy. But as long as you're spending money, GDP increases. It doesn't matter for what. That should be a credit, I guess. Anyway, it should be a ding in your budget, and because it's a loss that you have to replace. But that's not. There's nothing in our economy that measures or addresses that at all.
And the same can be said for material, raw material that we've taken out of the bank accounts of the earth.
That's right. There's no accounting for the loss.
Put nothing back.
It's all a plus. Yeah. And it's not. Yeah. That's the big illusion that we run with, because it's all extractive. And as long as you can extract, you're wealthy. But there's you have to put back, and there's no putting back. We don't do that. We don't do that in our economy at all. There's no mechanism for those kinds of things. And that's actually where government sits. Government sits at the putting back place, because the government takes taxes from the people and then puts it back in ways that makes life better for people, theoretically. And part of that life better could be protection, but it's not the only way. And we got hung up on protection. So we spent a ton of money on protection and none on education or healthcare or all the other things that actually make my life better. So it's gotten to be kind of extractive too. And every time it tries to put back, it's told that that's not really what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to do this other. It's supposed to be extractive. And then they complain because it's extractive. We don't want to give the government anything. We want to keep the government from getting anything that it could from us. So you're incentivized and seen as a hero when you don't pay your taxes, or you reduce your taxes, or all those things, which is why Trump is able to say, see, I'm not paying taxes. Isn't it wonderful? Look at how rich I am, and I'm not paying taxes. And that's really such a loss, because he's not giving back. That's how we give back, is through taxes to the government. And then the government is able to give to those places that aren't getting it or should be. I mean, and they used to do that way more than they've done recently. You know, and the whole tenor has changed since Reagan, actually, to stop giving back in these places. They are seen as wasteful. Welfare and all that kind of stuff.
Well, there seems to be a sort of a national narrative. So I was reading an article this morning in the news feed. I have to touch in every morning, and I just sort of go over it quickly. And so there was an article written by this young woman who moved to Copenhagen. And she said, I gave up, I've given up large part of my income. But she said, you know, I'm just terrified. But for some reason, my life is so much better, you know, and you read, well, okay. So she's paying taxes that can be 50% on it, just about everybody. And maybe when you're wealthier, it's, you know,
used to be 90% on some of the really rich
value added taxes, or is that what they get? Yeah, VATs. But she went on to say, well, you don't have to worry about illness. You don't have to worry about housing. It's not that it's provided, but there's a whole system that's been set up so that with the intention that everyone should be well housed.
Yes.
It's that intention that's there, and it's palpable in Copenhagen.
Yes.
And food, it's palpable that, food will be provided, and it's pretty much available in whatever you need. You pay for it, yes, but nobody's scalping. No, I mean, she went on for quite a bit to describe that, and we began to see there's the trade-off. We have stress and worry and fear and anxiety, and we've made that trade because we've been sold a bill of goods. The national conversation was somehow extracted out of the 50s and shifted a little bit and changed gradually. And there are people who've written about this process, but it was very slow at first, but comprehensive. And the whole conversation started really shifting 1970, but then through the 80s and 90s, they gained a strong foothold until now. It's as you described. And so we get the perfect exemplar of, in your face with a Donald Trump or, some of the others who are running our government right now. In a sense, it's the government we deserved, but by whose input was that created? It wasn't mine. It wasn't yours.
Milton Friedman had a lot to do with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can point to individuals, but this was a national shift, which we can't really point to, focus down on. But something happened. The 50s weren't perfect, in particular because of, racial and, LGBTQ, that sort of nonsense. I mean, it's only nonsense because we've labeled it and we've started taking up sides. Otherwise, no, it's personal. But somehow we decided as a nation that we were going to make a big deal of it and argue about it and hate about it. Somehow paying, allowing workers to form unions so that they can, actually demonstrate for their own well-being and work with, management, which was happening in the 50s. No, that was decided to be not worthy of our attention, and somehow it was bad. I mean, these are national discussions of massive import that were just taken over. And I don't think too many people realize just how extraordinary that shift was.
Yeah. No, there's been sort of a passivity on the other side to tell the opposite story. There was a moment when his name is not coming, FDR, when FDR was doing, there was some prominence to that story. Yeah. And so it had some voice, but since then it's been really passive. We've really been silenced by those who have seen the opportunity, understand the personal benefit to them of hanging on to the capitalist system, because they understand how to work that. And so that's where they're successful, and they're very successful. You learn how to work the system and the system works for you. It's just absolutely true. But it's not working for all of us, which is the other side of it. So they've used that. I mean, it's just brilliant when you listen to them. You just turn it around, because they're talking about them. They're talking about what they're doing. They're talking about what they're going to do. But they always say, it's you. You are doing this. You are doing this. You are doing this. And it's them that are doing it. They are systematically now undoing our legal system, very consciously doing it. And they are putting the blame on those people who are trying to keep it together. They are making them the villains when they are the villains. Oh, we're going back. Oh, there's a whole group of people who are law-centered lawyers and judges and all of that, who are very deliberately working to undo everything that's been done in the last 100 years, basically. And they're using the rhetoric that if we ever had a law on the books and it was not eliminated, then the laws that have come in after to nullify them are nullified. You can't do that. You have to go back to that law and be that way, and then move from there. So they're really systematically undoing everything. I mean, they've undone the EPA, they've done all sorts of stuff, and they're very intentional, very intentional.
Who's the they?
Well, that's exactly it. Who? They're not anybody you would recognize. They're not people who are prominent. That's not the point. The point is that they're being very, those are the people that tell people like Trump, these are the judges you want to pull forward. He doesn't know. But they have a whole group of people that they've indoctrinated to think this way. So you see it in Amy, whatever her name is, who's one of the judges now. You see it in most of the people who've come in from under Trump have been indoctrinated this way. This is how they think. That's what they'll tell you. I forget what the term is for this, but they claim to be reading the Constitution the way it was written.
Originalists.
Originalists, and you can't allow for any deviation or any growth or any change in our understanding of how the world works or any of that, because the originals had it right, and we want to go back to that.
But the interesting thing is that you can't, I mean, Noam Chomsky, among others, have been speaking about this for decades. Unfortunately, they're kind of like Debbie Downer, you know. I mean, because that's what it comes across like. When instead, if it could be put to people just what their life could possibly be, I mean, what are they missing? Peace, joy, and harmony. I mean, you know, right there's 3 words. I mean, how many feel at peace? How many are feeling harmoniously connected to their neighbors, even, much less the rest of the city or state or country? How many are feeling joy in every moment of their lives? I mean, this is really where the issue needs to be grown. I mean, I love to read Noam Chomsky, or I certainly did in the past, not so much anymore, because I don't have time for that. No, I mean, you know, you can't be disparaging. People need to hear something hopeful and joyful, you know, or, you know, filled with possibility.
That's why I bought the book, and I'm reading the book Activating the Common Good by Peter Block.
Yeah.
So there's a good title.
Good.
Activating
the Common Good by Peter Block. And he has in there about the economic theology that our culture is about now, economic theology. And wow. I'm still trying to unpack that in my own understanding, but I have a general idea about it, because our economic system is not about the common good.
Not
at all. So it's about activating the common good, and I would love to have read this with other people. I'm just reading it myself, but anyway, that's the good news, the alternative, the new way of thinking and feeling and investing and being, activating the common good as our approach to living.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
the world
continuity.
folks are doing that. GRC, as you're talking, I'm thinking about both of those groups, because world unity is really striving to make the shift from a very spiritual perspective. So there's a lot of meditation, a lot of intention for indigenous wisdom, all of that stuff, but it's all like up here. You know, it's, you feel good, you sing, you're together, you do all that. GRC is a bunch of folks who are really busy trying to have an impact. They want to see a result for what they're doing.
And what's GRC?
It's the Global Regenerative Collab.
And
And
I heard of that.
yeah, they have a whole bunch of folks. It's a strictly volunteer organization. They have all sorts of meetings. This morning, the meeting was around Bucky Fuller's game and some of the things that have happened. I don't know if you know his world game, where he had people who, you're divided into countries, and the number of people has to do with the number of people in the country. So if you're highly populated, you got a lot of people. If you're not so populated, you got a few people. And then resources are divided out, and you get to see how they move and see where they end up and how that happens. It was just really brilliant. And it's something you actually physically do. They get bunches of people together in the same place to do it, so they can have this visceral experience and really see what's happening in the immediate. So Zan Gill has had worked with Bucky, and she was giving the presentation, and it was brilliant. She brought in Monopoly. I don't know if you know, but Monopoly was created by a woman, and it was created to help people understand what capitalism really does. And Zan had a piece that I hadn't heard, that the woman whose name is not coming to my mind, I want to say it's Helen Parker is what I want to say, but I don't know if it's true. She was a Quaker, and so the game was disseminated through Quaker churches, and they would rename the pieces around the board to fit their situation, so they could begin to see how their situation was working. And when she talked to Parker Brothers about the game, they didn't want it. And then after she played it for a few years and they began to see how it was being used, Zan said copied it and turned it into a capitalist game, which is the Monopoly we know. But that was not the intent of it in the beginning. It was to show what happens when you do that and how to strategize around it. So that was just fun. And so she had a picture of the first board, which I really want to look at in more detail, because I'd never seen that before. But then we got into games and all sorts of things. But there's a governance group, there's an economics group, there's an education group, where people are talking about projects they're doing, things their ideas they're bringing forward that are all practical, all hands on the ground, trying to make a real difference, but from these same value systems and the community and all of that, trying to figure out how to make that work. So it's always very rich. And today had people who have been really doing a lot of that for a very long time at a pretty good success level in different ways. So it was really fun to hear some of their stories and their resources and stuff. So people trade resources, and it's a very vital group.
I just started reading this book, Activating the Common Good, and Monopoly is in there. It talks about Monopoly, so I'm gonna really read that, to really learn.
Let me see if I can put in the chat. I've never done this before. I've done it in other groups, but I'm not seeing. Oh, well, let me see. Let's go to the chat. There it is. Okay, so let me see if I
Mark
can.
is still with us. Good. Okay.
Yeah, he's just on the phone. So
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
yeah, there you are.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm following along. Thank you.
Great.
One of the sort of common themes that I'm hearing, or sort of being called to point out, that kind of links a bunch of these things together, is the fundamental reality that for long-term health, we need to be giving focus to the inside of our groups, the group as a whole, and what is immediately around it. So yes, we can have capitalism as a coordinating orientation, and use it to, in the short term, focus on, the self or the individual. It definitionally means we're not focusing on the other in long-term health. So definitionally, it means that we're moving towards a state of future ill health because of it. And so until we are talking about those types of fundamental realities, we're really just dancing along the surface of the scale of ill health we currently have, and also like the movement, the time frame, and the scale of change that will happen as we move towards health.
It was difficult for me to really hear and understand what you're saying, but what stood out to me was your sentence about capitalism as a coordinating mechanism. Could you unpack that? Say something about that, or what's an alternative to that?
Well, it's in some ways like, again, somewhat self-evidently, capitalism as a general orientation is around maximizing surplus, or I mean, it gets complicated, and it's a big topic to sort of unpack all the pieces of it. But in general, it's about incentives and sort of being on board with the worldview that providing financial incentives for activities, and therefore the potential for centralization or sort of accumulation in specific pockets of wealth, is a good way to coordinate or incentivize activities.
It's not. If I could interrupt you a minute, because I understand what you're saying, and capitalism is not a coordinating mechanism for the common good.
Right. That's exactly.
Statement.
And Gil Friend this morning had 6 areas that he feels capitalism totally does not address. And I'm going to get that list from him. He spoke them. He didn't put them in the chat, so I couldn't copy them. But I will get that from him, because I think that's being aware of that is really helpful, to be able to specifically see those places where it undermines the common good. It undermines that integration. And so I'm really curious to get that list from him to be able to think about it more deeply.
We need clarity. We need to have that embedded in our worldview thinking process, that capitalism is not cannot be a coordinating mechanism for the common good.
Well, I think there's 2 ways of, at least 2 ways of going about it. One is to not do those things, and the other thing is to only do those things that help, which is kind of where the value set that I've worked with does. It's my belief that if we actually did that, all of those things will just disappear, because they don't fit, that you can't do them in that context. Right. Reciprocity. talks about a full circle. So if you're going to have a full circle everywhere, capitalism doesn't do that. So maybe we could make changes in capitalism, to your point, Mark, that really institutionalizes the full circle piece in some kind of way. So that might be an avenue toward change. I mean, we're part of our dilemma, I think, is that we all know we want change. We all know we need it. We all know it's coming, but we're not sure how. And if we can keep enough of our civilization intact as we lose so much of the natural world, which I'm not sure is possible, then there are transition things that we can do. I'm not sure we're going to have time to do transition things, frankly. I'm just not sure. So then I don't care about the rest of it. I just want to do what I think will work. And that seems to me to be the firmer ground to stand on. Because if we're really making life possible, then maybe life will be possible. If we're not paying attention to that, then there's a good chance that our life won't be possible. Because life will continue on this planet. It will look really different, and it may not include humans if we aren't proactive about managing that. If we're not helping the planet rebalance in a way that we can tolerate, we won't be here. I mean, we just won't, because the things that we depend on won't be here either. And I don't think people get that. We keep thinking we can do stuff, but we can't, because we are dependent on other life. And if other life is not here, it doesn't matter what we can do, because we won't be here. It's just, so that's my bias.
There's a very interesting quote. I'm looking at the Amazon splurge about the book Activating the Common Good. And there's a quote. I'd like to read this and think of autopoiesis, which, Mark, if you're not familiar with it, it's that capacity of any living thing, whether it's just cellular all the way up to the largest mammals. They create the best conditions for them to continue to live in the best way possible. So here's what Peter Block says. True freedom is the capacity to create a world we wish to inhabit. Our well-being cannot be purchased or healed by more professionals or programs. What we have and what we are is enough, economically, politically, socially, personally. This is the foundation of the common good narrative. From the position I sit in, and from what we've been talking about for the last year and a half, this is truly talking about the groundwork so that autopoiesis, in other words, people working within their own self-interest, but fully aware of the constraints. Like if you're a cellular being, you're fully aware in whatever sense they can be aware of the constraints. There's so many, but they're going to pursue their best life. And Peter may be onto something. I'm going to take a look at this book.
Oh, he's an old.
I love that one. That one. I mean, that's just the introduction.
Yeah. Peter is one of the first OD folks.
OD?
So
What's OD?
Organizational development.
Okay.
So that's been my journey on this life. So he's one of the first very early people to look at how to make organizations successful and all that kind of stuff. So he's part of the development of that field.
And his main focus that I get it, well, and it's in the byline, is the common good.
Yeah.
All about the common good.
And he's got
I have to bid you all farewell. I've reached my next meeting. This was a wonderful conversation. I look forward to the next one, and wish you well for the weekend.
Wonderful.
Oh, it's nice to have you here, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Great. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
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 Yeah, and I put the Monopoly board in the chat so you can
Yeah,
download
it's
it.
very interesting. I mean, it's much more specific.
Yeah, yeah.
What are we to do with this? What is it? What?
Well, it's the original Monopoly board.
It's
How?
just very, very interesting. I mean, it's
So
the
you can download
landlords.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a JPEG, so you can download it onto your computer and blow it up so you can actually see it.
Okay, thanks.
But you have to do it before we end.
That's what I'm trying to do right now. The little
Okay.
thing is.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, I got something. I don't know what that means.
Oh, let's see. Okay.
And December 19th, I will be interviewing Alpha Low on the network and for the podcast. And he's an amazing guy. He's really amazing. He's brilliant. He's creative. He's funny. And his thing is water. So we'll be talking about water. And he has the fourth law of thermodynamics that he feels he's discovered that we may get to talk about a little bit, which excites me.
The fourth. Entropy is the third, right? What's
Second.
the second?
Yeah. And I don't remember what the third is. And he feels he has the fourth, which is kind of interesting. And I'm not 100% sure I'm going to remember this exactly right, but it's matter flows and energy cycles is what he will say.
I just read that. I wonder if it's in Peter Bloch's book, because I just read that and underlined it. I got to find it.
Yeah, I think that's Alpha's has been his thing. He's been talking about that. I don't know.
What's his name again?
Alpha Low. Alpha as an alpha dog, and Low, L-O. He's Oriental.
Alpha Low?
Yep. And he's in LinkedIn a lot.
If I put Google Alpha Low, it'll leave me. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And he does cartoons and stuff, which is actually how I got introduced to him. I saw one of his cartoons and I asked if I could use it, and he said sure. And so we've since talked, and he's shown up in some of the groups I'm in now. So he does these really very basic cartoons to help people understand things like the biotic pump and all that kind of stuff. So
say that one sentence again about it, the energy flow and blah blah blah.
So matter flows and energy cycles.
Yeah, right. I just read that.
Yeah,
energy cycles.
He's working on getting a PhD, and that would probably be part of his thesis, so that he can do the research to validate that. So if he does that, he'll probably get a Nobel Prize.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, and he's trying to scientifically prove the biotic pump too. I guess there's not been enough research to make it established science. There's a lot of people who are working with it and understand it and believe it and all that, but it's sort of still on the edges. So
nice.
Yeah.
So are we done?
Yeah, we're at time for sure.
Hey.
Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. This has been great to be with you all.
Yeah, it's fun.
See you next time.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.